Welcome to our first MatchesFashion.com show studio panel discussion. We're here with an amazing range of London-based fashion designers, all of whom are appropriately stocked by MatchesFashion.com. Matches stocks 23 London Collection men's designers, so they're an incredibly supportive retailer. Some of the brands they stock include Christopher Kane, JW Anderson, Richard Nicole, and the amazing boys I have with me today. We're going to be talking about London menswear and London Collections men, but before we kick off, I'll let you guys introduce yourselves, starting with you, Jonathan.
Hi, I'm Jonathan Saunders.
Hi, I'm Agi from Agi and Sam.
I'm Sam from the other half of Agi and Sam.
Hi, I'm Oliver Spencer.
I'm Mark Hare from Mr. Hare.
I'll start with an easy question to get you all going. How has the arrival of London Collections men sort of changed your career and shaped how you show and had an impact on your business? I'll start with you, Jonathan, because you're a good talker.
Well, for me, it's enabled me to do it in the first place. I think that having a women's brand and then adding the division of menswear to it, obviously it's a big decision. Running a business on its own anyway is complicated and takes a lot of time. So the fact that London provides that ability to be able to do a show here or a presentation here, whatever the format takes, has enabled me to do the line basically.
How about you guys? It's quite different for Jonathan, obviously, because he started as a women's wear designer, but how about you guys? What about for you, Oliver? What's it been like having...
Well, I guess it was, I actually started before it started.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
So I did it when it was the one day, and it was just sort of, I think, me and Patrick, and Top Man, of course, doing everything for everyone. It's been very good. It's got more and more international as we've rolled along. And it's been great for profiling abroad, at home, and really propelled the business over the last 3 years, I would say. So it's helped a lot.
Would you guys... Sorry, you were going to say something, Mark.
I mean, it was absolutely necessary because it was quite difficult to run a menswear London-based business prior to that, because the only day you could show was after the end of the season, pretty much, when everybody had already spent all their budgets and gone elsewhere to look at other things. So the fact it's gone to the front of the calendar is awesome. There's a few little things to iron out. And it'd be nice if there was another week in between Christmas and it, but you know, can't complain.
Yeah, you must all be very busy around the festive season.
I was going to say, it's been weird for us though, because when we first started, it was almost like as this kind of whole LCM thing first started, so we've kind of grown, and as we've grown, it's grown, so it almost feels quite natural. I mean, we know how lucky we are, because comparatively before then we just started, but yeah, we've been really, really lucky to be part of this. It's helped the business massively.
Yeah. I think it goes hand in hand with women's wear as well. I mean, London Fashion Week on the whole has become more established, and international buyers are coming as well as just press, and so therefore it has a knock-on effect as well, and for menswear has reaped the benefits from that. The change in attitude towards London in general, not just being about an opportunity to show ideas, but actually to present businesses. So I think it reflects in men's and women's.
Yeah, because I'd like to say as well, in terms of like obviously London being like a showing platform, but I think even in terms of sales, obviously Paris is the main hub, but last season we made sales in London, which I think is completely sort of
most of our sales.
Yeah, always in London. So it's amazing that sort of big stores from as wide as sort of far as wide and as wide as Japan coming over, sort of speaking to designers is pretty amazing.
There's been a swing though, which is good, away from Milan and over here to Paris and London, and the Italians are used to having it all their own way, and now we're getting in. The British designers are definitely getting in the mix. It's a very old guard situation over there surrounding menswear, and I think it's really rocked the boat a bit, but it's been a great thing.
Yeah, because when we go to Paris and do sales, we speak to a lot of sort of editors and buyers, and everyone's saying they leave London and it almost feels like it's a bit of an anticlimax, and it's not as exciting. So that's a testament.
It should hopefully like stir it up a little bit more. I think here for like London, it's good because everyone kind of looked at London and thought how exciting it was, but no one really saw us as like a marketable like sort of fashion week. I think that change has been the biggest now, and I think hopefully it should stir up other sort of older regimes to start like doing a bit more.
It's interesting, we touched on this before when we talked about how London Men's just used to be this kind of strange day that was tagged on. When actually London, perhaps more than any other city, has such a rich history in terms of menswear and has been so sort of innovative in sparking menswear trends throughout history. And we were talking a little bit about some of the amazing subcultures and tribes that have had an impact on London men's. You've got your mods, your punks. Did you guys feel that when you started? Is there something very special about showing in London with that rich heritage? Is that something you look at when you're designing?
I don't think you need to look at it. I think it's just inherent. I think there's so much going on in terms of art and music and culture, and it's so multicultural. You see so many different walks of life, so I think you just naturally absorb it. And for example, for us, we have a concept, but then everything that feeds that is just what surrounds us. So we don't even really have to. It sounds really sort of horrible, but you don't even have to think about sort of the information that feeds that. It just happens.
The other great thing about London is that there's so much more than just that. We also have that massive long history and establishment of men's fashion as well that tempers the other side of it. And the interesting thing about OCM is it's almost like throwing a fox into a house of chickens. It's like everyone's there all at once, and you can walk around LCM and you can come out with completely different things depending on what you go and have a look at, or you can look at all of them and come out completely confused.
So there's no tension between that kind of that traditional, Savile Row heritage and those more sort of...
There's tension, but that's what makes it good.
Do you think?
Yeah. I agree with that.
Really?
Yeah.
I never really saw that.
I don't think we're close.
Well, there is.
Maybe we saw anybody.
We've got a debate going. This is good.
We just do our own thing. We're just like, okay, in and out.
Yeah.
There is tension. There has to be, because they're two completely different things, and everyone at the end of the day is sort of fighting for what's coming into town. So there's a bit of tension.
I suppose that combination is how new ideas come from things, and I think any menswear designer draws from that heritage, irrespective of whether it's a natural thing to do or not. Men's clothes are not reinventing the wheel. It's it's a structure that you work to, which
there are rules you have to adhere to.
Yeah, and you learn those rules through the history and the heritage. So if you have a more modern interpretation of that, then great. But I think they're all intrinsically linked. Do
you guys try and link them? Do you try and marry them? You've talked about this before, Ollie, when you mentioned how you work your brand. It's combining tradition with more sort of streetwear. Is that what you do as well, Jonathan? Is that something important?
Well, you just make stuff that you make stuff that you want to say, and you use the tools and the medium and the knowledge you have to say that thing. And with me, with menswear, I find it a really natural progression because I wear it and I understand it. I learned a lot about how to make it because it's really different from women's wear, and you're still learning as you go along. But yeah, you just use the things, the ingredients, and to say your story. Does that answer the question?
That does answer the question.
I think without sounding cheesy, it is like a journey. And when I was at uni, I tried to sort of learn about the rules of menswear and why things happen and why things are the way they are and why tailoring hasn't really changed that much in hundreds of years. So then when we first started, we were doing certain things, but it was for different reasons. It was to try and get notes or whatever. And then now you start to sell, and you need to think about commerciality, and so many different things come into play. And then you look at other brands and you want to sort of step up, but then
I think for men's it's good for us as well because it's quite easy. I think this is what London does well is designers seem to really put a lot of personality behind what they do, and there seems to be a lot more emotion behind it. So when you kind of look at each of our brands or the designers that design, you can see a lot of that person in it. And I think that's what people seem to pick on quite well. I think it's what people kind of want, especially when they're buying clothes. They want to feel like they're absorbing something rather than just buying a shirt.
Do you guys agree with that? You're kind of nodding. Mark, do you think?
Yeah. I was just thinking about how the diversity of London also helps it a lot, because a lot of people that are in that arena and presenting clothes are not necessarily English or London based.
Exactly.
So a lot of people come in here and present stuff that has a London English tinge on it, but there's so much influence from all over the world. The other point, going back to talking about the subcultures that have come out of London, when you look at them, even all of those, the iconic subcultures like mod and skinhead, they all borrowed very heavily from traditional menswear, and then it was about them taking that traditional stuff and presenting it in their own way, so they didn't look like the other guy. And that's what I mean by the tension. I mean, the tension will always be there because that's it's, I don't want to look like that guy. I want
it's
somebody's
rebellion,
stuff.
isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, we're very in the UK. We're very individual people when it comes to clothing. We're quite eclectic. If you go to New York, well, speaking personally, I think they all dress like sheep. They're all in uniforms, and it's just become very boring to look at. They're all this preppy thing, and you know,
even in Brooklyn, everyone has beards and hoodies and denim jackets.
Yeah, they all look like they've just walked out of a woods.
Pretty generic.
Because you're not old enough.
When we talk about this like British style and this London style, you mentioned eclectic, and I think that's a good word. But what do we mean? Like, I think there's a wit that's quite inherent. Like you guys play with humour a lot in what you do.
We don't go. You know, guys that come and shop in Matches, or you know, well, we hope our customer comes in and they will browse and they will put together their own interpretation of everyone's collection. So they will buy, you know, maybe a shirt from me and a jacket from you guys and a tee, a pair of shoes from you, and they'll put that look together for themselves. And the UK customer is capable of doing that. Yeah. Whereas when you go abroad, they're not. They dress head to foot in one label. They literally walk in with the ad. And so you've got a guy here who's intrinsically got a taste level, which is just fantastic. So you're dealing with someone who's kind of cultivated and knows what he wants, loves details.
I think it is the fact that in London as well, there is that heritage, whereas in other places such as New York and America, there isn't really sort of a point of reference. It's just kind of
casual sports.
Exactly. So everyone's just kind of choosing from and picking from so many different places that there isn't, you know, like here there's so much sort of taste and craftsmanship and things to think about and consider, but
it's kind of like what Mark was saying as well. It's that
relevance.
It's the massive cultural society that we've got in London. It's like unlike anywhere, and it's like that's half the reason why like our collections, a lot they do, like Agi was saying. But I think that in itself allows people to kind of see how people dress from like all over the world, and actually feel like it's possible for us to do that ourselves. Whereas
also in London, there's actually doesn't seem to be so much of an age restriction on guys buying clothing as well. There's, you know, people say to me, what's your demographic? Well, I'll tell you, it's probably 25 to 70. I've got them all coming in buying the stuff, and I think that's just absolutely, that's great.
I think when you look at a British customer as well, I think they're afraid to wear colour, they're not afraid to be bold in what they wear, but they're always inherently masculine. Whereas you see that in other cities or other cultures, that if a man loves his clothes and he dresses up, it's sometimes not as masculine as a British customer. I don't know if you agree with that.
But that relates back to the relevance and sort of the rules of menswear. It's almost like, again, people in London and British people, they understand and appreciate the rules without even knowing, whereas you go to sort of like different walks of life and they'll just put whatever together and think that's interesting, and you know it is, but it's, you know, it has no relevance.
There's a lot more social acceptance. I was going to say there's a lot more social acceptance in fashion here as well than there probably is. I think when, like, kind of what Jonathan's saying, like you kind of get pigeonholed to certain areas of being interested in fashion, whereas I feel like in London everyone sees fashion outside of that. Like it seems to be quite like an art form as well.
Is London Collection been helping with that? Because people often say that a lot of the journalism surrounding it talks about how it's allowing men, you know, to feel comfortable with saying, you know, I'm interested in fashion. Have you noticed that? Has that increased since we've had London Collection Men?
I think people want something different. I think, you know, the consumer that buys luxury goods, because luxury market is growing in every sector, isn't it? And people that buy luxury want to look different from each other, and therefore people are fed up of wearing big brands, Gucci, Prada, you know, the Italian ethos of what fashion was for menswear. And so even that crosses over into women's, where they're looking for something that's different, that's still luxurious, and they're willing to spend whatever they want to spend on it. So for me, that's why London is more popular now, because they don't need a brazen logo on it.
Okay. So people like this idea of having discovered something themselves almost.
They want, you know, like boutiques, our boutique business, which is small independent stores, need to compete, the American ones in particular, need to compete with Barney's and Saks and the big department stores. And so therefore they will buy brands that they don't carry necessarily. So it's been the rise of the independent because of that. Everybody wants something different. So I think that London Men's is the reason why it's popular as well is not only because of the talent here, but is also because the notion of an independent, non-branded, designed product has become more appealing, I suppose.
Another thing is that we, in London, even pre-internet, we've always had a very ravenous media that stirs up everything to do with fashion, and that media's treated men's and women's wear equally all the way through. So from the launch of ID and magazines like The Face, it's put both of those things on an equal footing. So to have LCM come along, it's not like suddenly there's been an epiphany, all of a sudden everyone can come out in their sort of men's clothes. They've just been here the whole time. The internet has spread that around the rest of the world, and the world's catching up, but we're kind of doing what has always happened in London. It's just now there's a spotlight.
Just got a space.
So true about ID and Days. They were always kind of both men's and women's.
Yeah. Because if you do go to like a city outside of London, it's completely, and you forget this. And I grew up in the north, and I remember sort of religiously reading The Face and ID, and I remember coming down to London and just being like, oh my God, there's so many shops, so many places to go to. And I think that's just, as Mark was saying, with the internet and Instagram, and like subculture doesn't even, not even subcultures, but sort of trends and stuff don't seem to happen on the street as much. They happen on the internet. And it's just everything is possible and everything's accessible. So it's an interesting.
So we're agreeing that London Collection Event's well overdue then?
Well overdue.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There's a lot of British pride coming from you, Ollie. I'm really enjoying it. Let's talk a little bit about these rules, because we've all kind of mentioned that, these menswear rules. Are they breaking down more? You mentioned, British men, they don't care about wearing colour. Has it always been that way? What's changing if the tailoring's not what it is?
Well, there's always been the dandy. There's always been that guy that's going to express himself with his clothing. So that guy is essentially a rule breaker, and that's part of that's part of our heritage over here. So there are sort of certain occasions where you wear, I guess, certain clothing, and then you put your interpretation upon it, and that's what we do really well over here.
Do you try and break rules when you design? When you were starting out, did you think about my point of difference is going to be about
them? You have to question them every time. Otherwise, you just make the same stuff.
I mean, when we started, we said we wanted to do something different because we didn't feel that it was there. Like at the time, we didn't feel like for us print didn't seem to be a big thing that was being used in the right way. So when we first started doing it, we said, right, how are we going to do this? If we're going to do it like this, then we're going to make sure we can't put like 6 sleeves on a jacket because it's just pointless. You're already doing something quite crazy with the print. So there were already rules we'd set ourselves when we first started designing. So.
And are you motivated by how enthused your shopper has been to that? Does it make you feel like you can push that even further?
Yeah, I think so. I think as it's evolved, I think now we're starting to realise like people wear print, people are really excited by that, and it's become a thing. So now we're thinking of how do we push that even further? But there's still, again, adhering to those rules that can't be broken. So it's
what rules can't be broken?
Just
ridiculous
things like that.
Technical things.
It'd be like pockets, where your pockets have to go, how big your pockets have to be, like breaks, lapels, like the trouser lengths, like.
It's like, I think the perfect example is with, say, like a seat jacket. For me personally, I'd never claimed to have trained as a tailor or anything like that, but I sort of studied a little bit, and for me, I feel like a tailored jacket is a tailored jacket, and for us, when we design a collection, we'll sort of use different interesting fabrics or prints or colours, but in terms of what you can do to it, it's so fundamental to sort of the history of how men have seen fashion, and you can't mess with it too much because people aren't going to respond to it. So it's just, as Sam was saying, it's just about sort of looking at that and seeing what the piece is. You can't subvert it too much because people won't get it. So the same way that we wouldn't. I mean, everything that we make, we look at and we think, would we wear that? And I know in the past there's been some mental stuff that we've done that we probably wouldn't wear, but it's still, it's still there. So.
And when you start out, you're all about rebellion because you're trying to make a space of your own. You're trying to do it completely differently. But then as the more things you make, the more you begin to appreciate how well other people have done them in the past, and then instead of wanting to rebel against those things, you want to learn from those things so you can incorporate them into what you do, so that you can just get better and better at what you do. So it's a two-pronged thing.
Yeah, it's about creating the handwriting in your brand. I think that's the most important thing, and it shapes as the years and the season goes on. Hopefully it gets better and better.
It's even the way that you do your jackets, and you've got your sort of your statement red button on the lapel, which is amazing, and that's something that you do, and everyone knows that. You use interesting fabrics, but you're not.
Glad you noticed.
I used to work in retail.
Okay.
But yeah, the first couple of seasons when I did menswear, I was like, oh my God, this is really easy. The hell that you go through in fittings for women's wear, bias cut dresses and you know, and then you do it for spring, summer, and then it's hideous by the time you come to fall. You know, like you have to do something that is the complete antithesis of what you've just done, whereas menswear wasn't. So I was like, oh my God. And then I started realising, oh God, so now I'm staring at that jacket again, and I can see that fault in that sleeve, and I can see that pitches out, and I can see, and you start picking at it, and then I realised, actually this is just as hard, it's just different, or just as complex to get right, because it is in the detail, I suppose. Not just in terms of what you stick on it, just it's in the detail of fitting it.
Yeah, and the wear especially, like you can make a pair of trousers, put it on straight away and be like, yeah, these look amazing. You can wear it for a week and they'll just explode. And you didn't.
Sam's got really fat ass, and weirdly, like the what you didn't go. Every trouser they wear. Exploding trousers. That's
I think
a new
maybe
concept.
there's something wrong with their trousers. I think you're right. But no, there's certain points will wear away if they're a little bit too much tension in it. So stuff like this isn't.
Yeah, it's so subtle.
It's so yeah.
I've done the same pair of trousers every season, and I'm still trying to get the crotch right.
Yeah. So it's as much about perfection as innovation in menswear, and that's quite different to
it's really different.
I found with shoes that it takes a bit longer for you to notice all the things that go wrong with them. It actually took about 2 years. So I did that first season, thought, that was easy. Second season, it's just still easy. 3 seasons, then you see people in your shoes after a year and a half, you're like, oh my God, look at the state of those. And then, like, you fix that thing, and you've got another year and a half until you see if you've actually fixed that thing. So it's a really long-winded process to get it right. So people come to me now and they go, oh, you're doing a great job, and I'm at my most disappointed at this point, just going, no, I'm so far from getting this right.
It's really intriguing to me that you do think about the longevity of your item, because I think when people think about fashion, they often think of it as being very seasonal, and perhaps that's quite different in menswear, that you're thinking, you know, how are these trousers going to look after, you know, a year?
Men are practical, whether they're punks or mods or whatever they are, they're still practical, you know, like if it's a punk wearing these jeans, he needs to be able to wear his jeans and wear them for a long time, he wants them to stay together, you know, my female customers like put it in the bin by then, you know. Moved on to the next thing.
It's about seeing that piece that's so I've been at it for 9 years now, and it's about seeing that piece when you see that guy on the tube who's got that piece on that might be 8 years old, and it's about deciding in your own mind whether you're really proud of that at that point, or whether you're like, holy smoke, get me out of here quickly. I didn't do that, did I?
It would be good for you if for me personally, even if I was bored and I'd moved on from that point, if that guy was wearing that coat for 8 years, I think I'd be pretty proud of the fact that. Men do that. Men like take garments and they favour them and they keep them and they cherish them. I think women's fashion it tends to go so much faster that someone can look at a dress funny and the girl will never wear it again. But men will feel really, really tight to.
Oh, we become attached.
Yeah,
we definitely become attached to pieces of clothing. You lot just chuck them away. Yeah, that's it. Time to move on.
Yeah, that's interesting. I actually want to get back to the idea of the male customer in the shop and what he teaches you, because we talked a little bit about innovation, and what I guess I want to get at is whether that's coming from you guys trying to take your brands forward, or whether it's coming from learning what your shopper wants and him kind of pushing you forward. Is it design-led or is it shopper-led, or is it a bit of both?
It's a big compromise between the two things. Like as a designer, you're itching to you just want to make something that's going to blow people's minds. And then you go to the shop and you've blown people's minds too much and they don't buy it. So you've constantly got to sit somewhere in between the two things. So it's easy to make stuff that no one's ever thought of before and seen before, but you're probably not going to sell it because it's just too far out there, especially in menswear. Of course.
I mean, I personally spend as much time on the shop floor as I possibly can. I love retail. The retail aspect of it is actually about the best part of it. You get to meet the people that are buying your clothing. You get to understand how it fits. You get to understand how it is. And I between the stores that I have in town, I just generally go around and spend time in there and understanding. And the guys on the shop floor, I mean, their knowledge is just absolutely invaluable. You can sell in all types of places, independents, department stores, but you've got to somehow reach out and connect with that guy on the shop floor who's selling your stuff, and he's got to kind of understand what you're about, because it's giving him a meaning.
Has that made you change the way that you design stuff? Or
yeah, absolutely.
Are you ever surprised by what it is that your shopper really takes to, or what, like the kind of things that they enjoy from what you're putting out?
Sometimes, yeah. I think that's the thing about being a fashion designer. You know, you're not creating a body of art that doesn't matter what people think of it, because it's about the consumer and it's a service industry, and you know, it's continually humbling when you learn about what people want to wear. There's got to be a fight, isn't there, between like, this is what I want to say, you know, that otherwise you end up with safe shit. And then there's got to be an understanding and a listening to the person that's actually investing in it. I find it easier because I'm a guy thinking about menswear, so it's like all part of the one process, whereas women's wear is a different thing.
So do you approach it by what do I want, or do you think do you all do that?
Sure.
I do.
Yeah.
Oh.
But again, touching on what Mark was saying, it's in the beginning you need to try and make your point. So the things that we made, for example, weren't necessarily things that we would have worn.
It was trying to direct that personality, trying to get that image over to
Or try and have someone in your mind who you perceive you want to wear it.
Yeah.
You know, like a William.
Yeah.
He's, you know, a good person to imagine in the clothing.
Yeah. I mean, that's
Yeah.
why it is a
It's,
compromise, because you do start off with yourself, and then and you have to look at that and think, well, does anybody else is stupid and as I am?
And you are learning as you're going. Each one of us, I'm sure, each season we do, we're learning as we're going. So each season we see what they do, what they like, and we're learning from that. So learning from each other most of the time as well. I mean, when we first started, we were just these two kids in East London, dressed like idiots and like going out
still
and
are.
partying. We haven't learned anything. No, and the stuff we were making was kind of really crazy, and it was obviously the learning process and how we wanted to present our personality. But when we're getting like a season or two into it, and we just started going like, this isn't going to work as a business, because we're designing stuff for East London people who really like it, and they're the ones who are developing the noise and stuff, but they can't have any money and they can't afford it. So as we started realising that, we started growing up ourselves in that same time, and then realising, like, as we grew up and we decided we wanted to separate ourselves from that so much, then it started to develop the brand. So
Sorry, what were you going to say?
There's also the character you're trying to do for the season, you know. I start off like that, and then halfway through I start getting so into the guy and the character that sometimes there'll be pieces that you wouldn't wear. But I think it's just, if you start off with that, then you're probably doing all right.
Because it is tricky sometimes when, for example, when we do stuff and we'll do something that's a bit crazy and it's almost like a showpiece, and we're just like, no one's going to wear that. And we've done, I mean, it was mainly in sort of the first 3 or 4 collections, but the things that we did that we were trying to we saw as like a press piece, these things end up selling the best, and we're just like, I don't know how to do, like, what do we?
But I guess this is what I wanted to touch on before is it your shopper that's sometimes pushing you forward? Are you ever?
I think, as we were saying, it's just a bit of both. I think you have to, because as well, if you haven't got the press, people that aren't drawn to the brand, so you need to have something to draw you in. But then most of the people, probably 90% of the guys, aren't going to buy that press piece, but. You know, it's a bit of both.
I'm really interested to know what it's like to deal directly with your customer from menswear, because I don't have a store, obviously. So you have your wholesale partner that comes to the collection, they buy what they think their customer will want, and also what they personally want. You know, so it
changes a lot, because they really don't hold back. They'll come back and tell you everything they think about what you do, and in a lot of cases they like things from you for completely different reasons to the reason that you put it out. So, like I said before, it's constantly trying to work out that compromise between what you want to do and what there's demand for, because at the end of the day, we all know we've got to sell enough of it to stay in this wonderful job that we've got. You know, so it's a constant struggle.
But can I just ask, do you find that which I mean, she's sort of slightly different to clothes in the way that you can get away with wearing sort of crazy clothes crazy shoes to clothes. So do you find that like your more design pieces?
I don't wear crazy shoes.
I feel like
You're looking at your feet.
I know, yeah, we've all got really
all these wild shoes.
I kind of think people expect a little bit more from the shoes, because they're a bit of a 3D object, and it's more of a hard wearing thing. Like, as soon as you can scrumple something up into a ball, people are not entirely sort of less expecting it to last forever, but like when they take a pair of shoes out from you, you know, they want a bulletproof tank, basically.
The functionality of a shoe and the comfort is it's more important, I reckon.
It's been the hardest thing to learn, because it's quite easy to make something, like I said before, you know, it's quite easy to do something different, but to do something that's very good and that will last for a long time and has the quality to stay apart. I mean, clothes don't get bashed against the floor every second that you've got them on. A pair of shoes are in a constant battle with your foot and the earth at all times.
We'll agree, Mark has the hardest job.
That's why
I think I was just thinking about like the Raf Simons Adidas shoes, and you know, people are going crazy for those, and to me, they're absolutely mental. They're amazing, but I personally wouldn't, but I can imagine a lot of people would. So it's just that if that was sort of converted into a garment, would it do as well, or is it the fact that it's rough? I mean, obviously that helps. So.
It's changing a lot in shoes. To answer your question, I think when I started making shoes, I started making them because I'd had years of admiring shoes that I couldn't afford. And then I suddenly sort of had a bit of money and I could go out and buy shoes, and I've been looking at the same shoes for all those years, so I was kind of bored and just thought, I want to make some different ones because I've got different things in my head now. And in the last 5 years that I've been making shoes, I've witnessed and seen how all shoe designers and manufacturers of men's shoes attitudes have changed to what can be put out as men's shoes. As you say, like Adidas wouldn't have done something like that 5 years ago, and now exactly. They do.
I think it's a really interesting time because we're just, I don't know, are we out of a recession? We're kind of out of a recession, aren't we? Ish. And in previous recessions, like when you think about the early 90s, and it was all minimal, timeless, you know, and it's, you know, now we've been in a recession, but then people are still buying bold and buying things that stand out, and I don't really know why that is. I think it is that whole, like, the global saturation. Everybody's seen everything. You know, everybody's aware of everything so much. Before, fashion shows used to be just like, you know, the elite few going to the show, then they put it in their newspapers, and then people would know what to buy 6 months later or 4 months later. Now I've got 6 collections a year to do, all of which have to be different from each other. You know, the consumer's seen it on Instagram already. They don't need to wait to come out in a magazine, and, you know, like, everybody wants things fast, so even if money is tight.
Everyone's going to say everyone can get things faster as well, because it's like obviously big conglomerates now. Like I've heard stories of people being like waiting outside of a show, seeing a show coming out, getting all the sketches, drawing it up, sending it off, and designing it and getting it out into stores on the high street before anyone else can. So people are getting it a lot sooner. So people were kind of preparing themselves for that. So again, for us as well, it's always trying to think, how can we do this before it's going to get eaten up, destroyed, and spat out again, and then we release our collections, and then.
Yeah, I think, and previously you would buy a camel sweater from Armani and you would spend a fortune on it. Now you can get it in Zara and it's cashmere, so there's no visual point of difference, and there's no change in the quality as such necessarily. Not just Armani. Well, actually I am, aren't I? But you know what I mean. Yeah. I'm sure it feels, but the customer doesn't really get it. Whereas they can see something that has been embroidered or embellished or panelled with colour or an unusual mix of fabrics, because it's something that you can see the value in visually. Maybe
so the shopper's more intelligent, and they want to understand that something's luxurious, not just because of the name.
Well, it's just a great time to be very individual right now, especially within your collections, because there is this fast food mentality towards fashion at the moment, which is kind of very scary. We're not considering what we're doing correctly at the moment. A lot of people in our industry that line up along that lovely high street north of here, and we, as, so to speak, a new generation of designers coming through, are leading the way into the future, developing new things, developing new styles, new handwritings, and that's just so important.
I think that's what it's about now. It's about making sure, like, it's in our hands now to make sure that we develop something that is, it's almost like we're being more creative than the high street, so that people necessarily can't do that, or we're doing stuff, or we're trying to push things, or trying to look at even categories of sale or digital, or trying to just look at those things and make sure people can't do that, because it's quite easy for us, personally, for us to just keep on doing a digital print, but when you've got top man doing digital prints, it's
doing them better as well.
Yeah, it's just craftsmanship, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, everything should be expensive.
We need to go back to our shopping streets as well. I mean, I'm really privileged to be part of a great street, Lamb's Conduit Street, which is.
It's amazing.
I mean, it's an amazing street. You can buy your wine on it. You can get your teeth fixed. You can get buried. There's an undertaking. There's a couple of good pubs.
So is it very important to you to have? Because we kind of touched on retail, and we talked about this before, Sam, right at the start when you talked about being picked up. But is there something great about being picked up by like a British retailer like Matches Fashion?
Yeah,
of course. Yeah. I think that, you know, it gets you closer to the customer. They understand their customer. I think also the fact that it's bricks and mortar and online, in particular with matches, I think is really important. I think it's a really great model moving forward. You hear about Amazon opening up bricks and mortar shops in order to be able to associate and connect with the customer more. So I think for me it's a great partner because of that.
And is the Britishness of it important?
Yeah, of course.
I think it's more to do with being closer to your peers and you know, doing something for the people around you that you've grown up with. A lot of what you do, you're sitting there and you've got this global head on when you're designing and thinking about your business, and then all of a sudden when you actually see it on people in streets where you are, that makes a huge difference. You kind of feel like you're doing it more right than to all these anonymous people around the world that you don't know who they are.
Yeah, definitely.
Everybody does it in a different way. I think it's kind of more important for a shoe store is to have a shoe store as well. Speaking to Nicholas and other shoe designers that I know, like that's so important to their business. Whereas for me, I think you need to get to a certain level of turnover before you even think about it. Yeah. Because it's really important to develop that wholesale partner that enables to get your brand out there. I mean, we're selling to, I think we're in 100 different places around the, you know, it's like a lot of countries.
Shoe retail has just been so decimated, whereas with shoe versus clothing. But with clothing, at least you still have a massive amount of independent stores, so you've got that small knowledgeable retailer kind of thing. That with shoes is all but disappeared in the world. I can count all the individual shoe stores in the world on about two hands here.
That's for sure. But back onto the matches thing, what's always drawn matches to me is the shops. The shops are just great. I love the one in Notting Hill. Marylebone High Street is excellent, and Wimbledon's kind of always been there and about to move to a much bigger store now, which looks great too.
There's not that many stores that have got that like shop, like sort of
good feel.
And a really strong online
sale.
That must be really important for you guys. Just when you're younger, some of your customers, that you've done online sales through yourself as well. It's great to have.
It's weird for us as well. I mean, when we first started as well, I remember people coming to our shows and we'd get all these little independent boutiques, and people used to be like, you need to concentrate on Asia, you need to concentrate on Europe, like this is where you're going to get your sales. And we were like, oh, okay, well, we'll just carry on kind of what we're doing. And then quite quickly we got picked up by Liberty and Akini, and then like now working with matches now, it feels like British stores are really interested in working with young British designers, which is really refreshing. Almost seems to be more so than the rest of the world. And Mark was saying I'd love that, because like kind of when we did a Tottenham collaboration, it was just lovely to see people in our stuff that actually felt like we'd actually achieved something there.
Is it nice to see British men in your stuff? Is there something quite? Yeah.
I mean, it's nice to see
any men in your stuff.
It's just sorry, guy wearing your
see lots of men in your stuff. It's great.
So what's next for London Collection Men? How would we like to see it grow and develop, and just more of the same, bigger and better?
More days, please.
More days.
Yeah, definitely more days. We were talking about this actually on the tube because we were scared of separation. We were talking about whether it'd be good for sort of bigger brands to sort of come into and enter London Collections, whether that would sort of overshadow all the smaller brands, or whether it would help. And
it's helped women's.
Well, it's definitely helped.
I mean, Burberry's showing. Burberry's on the schedule now. That's helped. I mean, that's kind of they're kind of using them as the anchor on Wednesday afternoon. Stop everyone going off to Italy too quickly.
I just think we have to be too careful about not making sure that becomes the thing then in London, where it's all about the big brands and then we lose. I don't think it ever will happen.
I don't think that's going to happen, because hopefully the big brands have made a decision to come back, because there is so much talent here, and they want to be part of that party, because a lot of them, they sit up there in their lovely white towers and they look down on us a lot, and most of them are actually quite envious, because they'd rather be back down on the ground again, doing it in the old. I mean, Christopher's probably got 120 designers working for him. And it must be like, I don't know.
It's
pretty good.
I think, you have to have a women's business that's been going just under 10 years, or 10 years. And so you have a lot of, sale throughs that you adhere to, product that that you sell. You have a whole thing, whereas as a younger designer and a more independent designer, you are actually more free, in terms of what you can do and what you can experiment with, or try out.
It's also quite a
In
reciprocal
those big
thing.
brands are.
It's reciprocal because if it was just about having big brands, then all the big brands would have just stayed in Milan. But they're obviously coming back here because there's some sort of
It's an
draw
energy,
to it,
yeah.
and we need those big brands to come back here because it only works for us when all of the buyers come to London,
Yeah.
and then all of the buyers come here with the expectation of spending some money in London. Whereas at the moment they're sort of half and half there, and it's growing each season. But when that truly happens, that's when it really is working for everybody. And if you look at Milan as well, they've gone through a similar crisis in the last couple of seasons, whereby they are desperately scrambling to
For
find
nothing
some
new.
young Italian
Yeah.
talent to show that they haven't just sort of chased the money and sort of gone with the big guys kind of thing. So we're leading
We
it
have
properly.
more than enough talent, as this
Yeah.
panel proves. Thanks so much, guys, and good luck with the shows this
Thank
season.
you.
Thank you very much.
Lots of
Thank you
fun.
very much.
Thank you.
Cheers.